Hello friends, I'm Beth with the National Portrait Gallery and I'm pleased to welcome you to another introducing story time where we introduce you to the people and stories that have shaped our country. Today we are going to talk about President Abraham Lincoln, and this photograph of him, often referred to as the cracked plate portrait. This was taken by photographer Alexander Gardner in February of 1865. 150 years ago, when Alexander Gardner and Abraham Lincoln were alive, one way that people created photographs was to record an image onto a thin piece of glass and then transfer that image onto paper using chemicals. It was a tricky process that required both art and science, and when Alexander Gardner made this photograph, he accidentally cracked the plate that it was on. So he threw that piece of glass away because it was damaged, but kept the photograph that he had made from it. And from that photograph, we have the cracked plate portrait. Now it's possible that because Gardner's studio was in the heart of Washington, D.C., where President Lincoln lived, that he thought he would have another opportunity to invite Lincoln to his photography studio to make more photos. That never happened, so the cracked plate portrait is the final studio photograph taken of President Lincoln. So let's dive in and look at the portrait itself, starting with the colors. This photograph uses sepia tones. And sepia refers to the yellows and browns that we often see in old-fashioned photographs. These colors are not due to age or fading. It's actually because of the chemicals used to create the image. So in this case, the chemicals that Gardner used to transfer the image from the glass to paper created this sepia tone. As we look at Lincoln, we see that he's wearing a suit, a dark suit coat, dark vest, a white shirt, a dark tie. A lot of viewers notice that his tie is a little bit crooked and his shirt has a small fold in it. So if we compare this portrait to today, when politicians often try so hard to look neat and polished, this portrait looks very different. Let's look at Lincoln's face. What do you notice? The part of his face that's closest to us is in really sharp detail. And then as we move back, the image becomes blurrier, more shadowy. It's almost as though Lincoln is sort of fading into the background. If we look at the skin on his face, he has a lot of lines and wrinkles. He looks tired and worn out. He has lines on his forehead, lines on his eyes, under his eyes. He looks exhausted even, and yet he has a little bit of a smile. So how is this possible that he's on the one hand so tired, and what made him so tired, and yet he still has a smile on his face? Well, in February of 1865, Abraham Lincoln was preparing for his second inauguration. The presidential inauguration is a ceremony or event that happens after a presidential election. The person who wins the election at the inauguration swears to protect the people of their country, and then their time as leader officially begins. An inauguration is a sort of patriotic party. It's part ceremony, it's got a lot of traditions, and it involves a celebration of democracy and of what we call the peaceful transfer of power. Abraham Lincoln, when he was getting ready for his second inauguration, had already been president for 4 years. And in those 4 years, the United States had been at war, the Civil War. And the Civil War was a time when half the country, the Confederacy, wanted to leave and form a new country. The other half of the country, the Union, wanted to preserve or keep united the United States. They wanted to keep the whole country together. Many people in the Union opposed slavery, wanted to end it, make it illegal or not allowed anymore. And Abraham Lincoln was one of those people that opposed slavery. It was hard for him to see how many people wanted to leave the country, wanted to leave the United States during the Civil War, and it was hard for him to bring people together. When we look at this portrait of him, we can see the sadness that he must have felt. We see the dark circles under his eyes, probably from countless nights where he couldn't sleep because he was so stressed. And yet, by the time he sat for this portrait in February of 1865, he had just won the presidential election. It seemed like the Union was going to win the Civil War, and hopefully the conflict would end. So despite the exhaustion that he felt, Lincoln is smiling, perhaps thinking about happier days ahead for his country. A month after he sat for this portrait, in March of 1865, Lincoln spoke at his second inauguration. He urged the country to seek both justice and peace, and he ended with these famous words: "With malice, meaning hatred, toward none, with charity, meaning love, for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves with all nations." So Lincoln's words about justice and peace are just as important to us 150 years later as they were when he spoke them. When we looked at his cracked plate portrait, we see just how hard the fight for justice and peace can be, but that through it all, there is still a reason to smile and have hope. Thank you for joining us for another introducing story time. We hope to see you again as we explore another portrait and another story. Bye.